Let's start with something simple, but powerful. Patterns. Not just the patterns you see in nature, the patterns you actually live every day. Patterns in how you react, patterns in your mood, patterns in relationships, productivity, even stress. Most people try to change their life by changing actions, but actions don't exist in isolation. Actions follow patterns, and patterns usually come from something deeper. For centuries, universal teachings describe this using the language of vibration. Today, science often describes similar ideas through measurement, especially when studying energy behavior at very small scales. Different language, same observation. Here's a simple bridge. Vibration is what you experience. Frequency is how science measures it. Two perspectives. Same underlying reality. Across many traditions, there's a foundational idea. Nothing is truly still. Your heart beats in rhythm. Your voice vibrates when you speak. Your brain operates in patterns. Even emotional states have recognizable cycles. You don't need a textbook to know this. You can walk into a room and feel tension immediately. You can sense calm before anyone says a word. That's lived vibration, not mystical, not abstract, just observable human experience. Now let's connect this to science. In physics, energy often behaves in oscillations, repeating movements, measurable rhythms. Light has measurable frequency. Sound has measurable frequency. Even brain activity follows rhythmic patterns. Science measures what human experience has long noticed. Reality behaves in patterns, and humans are part of those patterns. Here's why that matters. Repeated thoughts create emotional patterns. Repeated emotional patterns influence behavior, and repeated behavior shapes outcomes. This isn't philosophy, it's observable psychology, and it sets the stage for understanding how change actually happens. So before we talk about transformation, before we talk about shifting identity, we have to understand this first. Patterns stabilize, and what stabilizes becomes your baseline experience. That's where the deeper conversation begins, and that's what we'll explore next. So if patterns stabilize, the next question becomes, how do they stabilize? Why do some reactions feel automatic? Why do certain emotions show up so easily? Why do habits, good or bad, tend to repeat? This is where both neuroscience and quantum science start giving us useful insight. Quantum science observes patterns in energy behavior. Neuroscience observes patterns in brain behavior. Different scales, same idea. Patterns strengthen through repetition. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's Law. It says something simple. Neurons that fire together, wire together. In everyday language, that means what you repeat becomes easier to repeat. If you consistently think stressful thoughts, your brain gets faster at producing stress. If you consistently practice calm responses, your nervous system adapts to calm. Not because of magic, because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity starts to feel normal. That's how patterns become baseline experience. Universal teachings often describe this as vibration stabilizing. Quantum science observes energy systems settling into stable patterns. Neuroscience describes neural reinforcement. Different language, same observation, patterns strengthen through repetition. Think about daily life. If someone checks their phone constantly, that becomes automatic. If someone practices gratitude regularly, that becomes easier too. If someone rehearses confidence, eventually confidence feels natural, not forced, natural. Here's a simple line worth remembering. What you repeat, you reinforce. What you reinforce becomes familiar. What becomes familiar shapes how you experience life. And once something feels familiar, you stop questioning it, even if it's limiting. Quantum science shows that conditions influence outcomes. Neuroscience shows repetition shapes perception. Universal teachings describe vibration stabilizing, all pointing toward one idea. Patterns become stable when repeated consistently, and stable patterns shape experience. This doesn't mean everything in life is self-created. Environment matters, relationships matter, circumstances matter. We're constantly interacting with influences around us, but awareness changes how you participate in those influences. That's where change becomes possible, because once you see the pattern, you can start shifting the pattern. Calm instead of reaction, intentional thought instead of automatic thought, choice instead of habit. That's not instant transformation, that's gradual stabilization. And gradual stabilization is what makes change sustainable. And this naturally leads us to the bigger conversation. How do you intentionally shift those patterns so they support the life you actually want? That's where identity alignment enters the discussion, and that's what we'll explore next. So when we bring all of this together, a powerful picture starts to emerge. Universal teachings have long described vibration as the patterns we experience in life. Quantum science studies how energy behaves in patterns and probabilities. Neuroscience shows how repeated thoughts and emotions stabilize into neural pathways. Different disciplines, different language, but they're all pointing toward the same essential insight. Patterns shape experience, and experience reinforces patterns. This is where identity becomes important. Not identity as a label, identity as your baseline way of thinking, feeling, and responding. Because what feels normal to you often determines what becomes possible for you. If stress feels normal, you interpret life through stress. If calm becomes normal, you interpret life differently. Same world, different internal pattern, and that shift starts internally before it shows up externally. Quantum science teaches us that conditions influence outcomes, change the conditions, and probabilities shift. In everyday life, those conditions include your focus, your environment, your emotional baseline, your repeated habits. That doesn't mean instant transformation. It means intentional stabilization. And stabilization is where real change happens. Here's something worth thinking about. You don't experience life exactly as it is. You experience life through the patterns you've stabilized. That's why two people can face the same situation and walk away with completely different experiences, different internal patterns, different interpretations, different outcomes. Awareness gives you the ability to notice the pattern. And once you notice the pattern, you gain the ability to shift it, gradually, intentionally, so you can align your internal patterns with the life you actually want to experience. So here's the thought I'll leave you with. Patterns don't change through manifestation. They change you consistently creating new ones. And once a new pattern stabilizes, your outcomes change. That's where growth becomes sustainable. That's where transformation becomes real. If this message resonated with you, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, plus share it with someone who's ready for a shift. Every week we explore the intersection of universal law, quantum principles, spirituality, and sometimes even how these ideas connect with religious traditions, all brought together into one energetic framework designed to help you grow intentionally. If you want to go deeper into this work, the full framework lives in the book, and everything connected to it is available through the website. I'm David Knox, the architect, and I'll see you in the next transmission.